Go make a fireplace! Right there. So as you can see here, we've got this awkwardly shaped alcove in our living room, and I didn't really know what to do with it for the longest time. And we also didn't have a good place to hang stockings in our living room at Christmas time. So we're going to kill two birds with one stone here. The first thing I did was mark out roughly the size of our electric fireplace insert, just to kind of give a general orientation of where we think it'll go, and it'll allows us to start wrapping our heads around it. We didn't end up using these tape marks really at all, so they're just kind of there, but it gave us a starting point anyways. So before we got started, I took off all the baseboard trim just so that I'd have a clean flat surface to build up against and just go straight up to the wall. So the first thing we did after removing the baseboard was to frame out the base of the fireplace, basically the part that the electric insert would be sitting on. And I didn't fasten it to anything because this would allow us to change the angle and see where we wanted the fireplace to face, kind of which part of the room we wanted it to point at, that sort of thing. And then once we figure that out, I could fasten it down, we can build up from there.
Is it going?
Yes.
Can you see me, YouTube? Alright here. I change clothes. As my old papa used to say, measure once, cut twice. I missed it. Bing. Finished!
So the first thing we did was build out the box of the fireplace that the electric insert would sit in. This would allow us to make sure the spacing was right, and that we'd have enough room to get our hands in and hit the controls on the insert and all that, as well as kind of getting a general idea of the size of the fireplace. Like I said before, I am not a professional framer, so this is not going to be pretty for most of this, I'm sure. But this corner is very oddly shaped, and there's a lot of weird angles I'm working with here, so I'm kind of making it up as I go and doing the best that I can. So, you know, as long as it looks good at the end, that's all I care about.
Can I help you? Daddy's little helper.
Daddy, this is gonna be loud. You're not gonna like it. So no, Daddy, it's fine. I like it. Daddy, there's a loud noise coming from over here. Just want to make sure you're aware. Just checking, you know, quality control and such. Any treats back there? Nope. Okay, I'll keep looking.
I wanted to be sure and run my electric to the back of the fireplace before I start closing everything in and can't crawl back in there anymore. I drilled my hole to run my wire down into the basement in the space at the bottom of the wall where the baseboard trim was. That way, if we ever took this fireplace out down the road, I could just cover that hole back up with baseboard and wouldn't really need to worry about patching any drywall or anything.
Mama, I must be free!
I had some 14.2 Romex left over from a previous lighting project. So I'm going to use that for this project. Since I'm just adding a single receptacle, it's going to be a single 15 amp circuit. So nothing too crazy. So I ran my 14.2 Romex crossed over to our sub panel in the basement, and I don't show it here, but I didn't have staples at the time when I ran this, but I went back through and supported my cable properly with staples after the fact. It's always best to kill power to the panel you're working in if you can. This worked out well for me because I'm running this receptacle off the sub panel in my basement, so because it's a sub panel, I'm able to flip the breaker at my main panel and kill power to the whole thing, which makes it safe to work in because none of it is live. basement sub panel. Whenever you're flipping a breaker off or on, you want to stand off to the side, look away, and then flip the breaker. That way you're not standing directly in front of the panel and nothing can blow up in your face. I wired in a new 15 amp breaker into my sub panel. Electrical work is something that you definitely want to make sure you know what you're doing and not just start experimenting and poking around with, because you can get seriously injured or killed doing that. So if you do not feel comfortable wiring in a new breaker or adding a circuit like this, please call a local professional and have them do it for you. There's no shame in playing safe. After I finished running my power, I continued framing out the rest of the fireplace and the chimney. I made sure to add some blocking a little above the fireplace so that when I go to add my mantle after the fact, I have something secure to fasten into. That way it won't just rip out.
It's your tag, Daisy. It's your tag. Do it. I'm a trained professional. I graduated YouTube University. It's okay, I brought a spare.
Nice.
Yeah.
After I finished framing out the upper part of the chimney, I added some slats to the back of the fireplace as well as a few more support pieces just to make it feel a bit more structurally sound, and then as well as having more places to mount my plywood to. I took a couple small scrap pieces of shiplap and used them to kind of mark out the angle and make sure everything was aligning the way I thought it would. And then I started cutting some shiplap pieces for the side and started mounting it. Because this whole project is centered around the fireplace, that was the portion I wanted to attach my shiplap first to make sure that was all level and looked right, because that was the focal point, and then I would fill in the other areas around it after the fact.
Dr. Loaded.
So it works! After I got the small pieces on either side of the fireplace and kind of worked my way up till it was just a single piece the whole way across, the top half of the front face went much faster and it was just smooth sailing.
Tell
So I started mounting some 1/4-inch plywood for the interior walls of the fireplace. I took my old work box and used that to mark out on the back wall, and I cut that out to install and wire up my receptacle. Once I had the plywood mounted and my hole for my receptacle cut out, I started installing the peel and stick backsplash that we got for the back wall. It's kind of a farmhouse style. We'll probably be redoing the fireplace part of this project down the road, and so I didn't want to use a bunch of shiplap or cut up some expensive materials when I'm probably going to be changing it down the road to put in a different electric insert rather than one that looks like a wood stove. The next step was to install the shiplap up the 2 sides of the fireplace. It was hard to get the angles and all the seams to line up perfectly because there are some weird angles at play here in this corner. So kind of each piece I would kind of have to cut it, test fit it, see how tight the seam was, maybe trim it a little bit, try again. So there's a lot of trial and error, and not all of these seams are going to be perfect, which obviously is going to bother me down the road because I'm a perfectionist at some of these things, and the little details tend to bother me, but I'm told I need to get over that. We're keeping the back of the fireplace with the peel and stick backsplash, but I decided to go ahead and shiplap the sides since I had enough shiplap left over. I used a laser line to try and line up the vertical seams of this fireplace to get the trim pieces and the angles to line up just right, because especially with these trim pieces, there's so many angles at play here, because there's the angle of the staircase meeting the front face of the fireplace, but that's also at an angle to the 2 walls, so that's where the other trim pieces meet. So these trim pieces and the joints where they come together were a nightmare to figure out. So by having this laser level, I was able to just trace a line, and that helped me figure out the cuts and made it a lot cleaner.
Like a glove.
Look it!
So because this is a decorative fireplace and this electric insert only blows heat out the front, I don't have to worry about the floor heating up at all. So instead of trying to figure out some sort of like stone base or something, I'm going to make the base of the fireplace out of wood. So I used some cardboard and some scrap pieces of wood to come up with templates to get the angles just right for cutting out the piece of wood that I'm going to be using for the hearth. So that way it fits snugly in and it looks nice. So once I had the angles marked out and cut out on a piece of cardboard, I taped these 2 pieces of cardboard to another straight edge piece of plywood to make a template that I can mark out for the entire front of the fireplace, so I can make it all one clean cut and have it all be one big piece. So after I had that front piece cut out, I did a bit of a test fit. I had to trim some of the shiplap up so that I could fit the board under and have it fit nice and snug. So even though I made that super detailed, super precise template with cardboard taped to a piece of wood, I somehow managed to not get the angles perfectly between the board and the wall. I called an audible, cut a straight edge on the sides, and started marking out to make new pieces to fit there flush against the wall. And probably still could have done that better because it still didn't end up looking quite right, quite as perfect as I want, but it never does. But it did end up looking really good. So after I marked out and cut out the new edge pieces to sit flush against the wall, I drilled in a couple pocket holes, attached that to the front piece of the hearth, and then glued it all together.
This is what dreams are made of.
So as you can see there along the seams, which apparently I did and didn't film, or did so poorly that I hid the footage, but I filled in all the gaps in the seams that weren't perfect with paintable wood filler to try and cover up some of my oopsie doopsies. The seams the second time around weren't quite perfect, but they were a lot better using that laser level than what I was trying to come up with before, which was not very good. And so I have thus burned the footage and it will never see the light of day. The last pieces of trim that I added on was the face trim right around the fireplace opening itself. This hid the ends of the shiplap that were the sidewalls of the fireplace and just kind of pulled the whole thing together and made it look really nice. So after I made all my final adjustments, it was time to stain the hearth, and Babes had found a stain look that she really likes that we went ahead with. It's a 3-step process. So we do a very light coat of the weathered oak, wipe it off, very light coat of the early American, wipe it off, coat of the weathered oak again, and that was the stain look. And then after the stain had fully dried and cured, I went ahead and added poly just to give it a bit of protection. So that's it for the fireplace chimney part of this build. Stay tuned for the next video, which will show you how I made the floating beam fireplace mantle. But here's a little sneak peek for those of you who can't wait. If you have any questions about anything I did in one of these videos, or if you have an idea of something you want me to try, please leave a comment down below. I try to look at, read, and respond to all the comments. I apologize if I've missed any, but just wanted to thank you all again for tuning in, and please like and subscribe for more. Have a good one.
Can't have copyright music.
YouTube don't like that. YouTube take away all my money if I do that.
Are you laughing at me? Rude. Oh, hello. Are you laughing at me? Why? There was that. Oh, like this?
She making fun of me.
It's okay.
Nobody's gonna see it. Except for thousands of people on the internet. No one's ever gonna know.